I almost didn't pick up the phone. Then I remembered whose name was on every single contract. My name is Claire Beaumont. I'm 26 years old, and until about 8 months ago, most of my family thought I was one bad decision away from moving back into my childhood bedroom and asking my parents to cover my phone bill. That was the version of me they'd decided on. The one who dropped out of her second year at U of T, who turned down a perfectly good management trainee position at my uncle's distribution company, who spent 3 years playing around with software instead of building something real. That was their phrase. Playing around. What they didn't know, what I had never once sat down and explained to them, partly because they never asked, and partly because I had stopped expecting them to understand, was that those 3 years of playing around had turned into a small but very profitable software consultancy that specialized in event management platforms. Which sounds dry when you say it like that. What it actually meant was that my company, a firm I'd built from my apartment in Leslieville with two people I'd met at a hackathon, built and maintained the backend systems used by some of the largest event and hospitality vendors in the Greater Toronto Area: booking software, inventory management, vendor coordination platforms. The kind of unsexy, invisible infrastructure that makes a wedding run without anyone noticing it exists. My family had no idea, and for a long time, I was okay with that. My older sister, Renee, was getting married in the spring. She'd been engaged to her boyfriend, Tyler, for about 2 years, and the wedding had been in planning for almost all of that time. Renee is 3 years older than me, and she has always been the one who did everything right. She went to Western, graduated on time, got a job in finance, bought a condo in Mississauga at 28. My parents talked about her the way people talk about a well-maintained car with quiet, satisfied pride. She ran on schedule and never needed repairs. I loved my sister. I want to be clear about that. Whatever happened later, I loved her. But Renee had a way of making me feel like a project she'd given up on. A draft that never got finished. She didn't do it cruelly. That's almost what made it harder. She'd say things like, "Claire, you're so smart. I just wish you'd apply yourself somewhere stable," and then move on before I could respond, as if she'd checked a box on a list. I had heard some version of that sentence my entire adult life. When the wedding planning started, I got swept up in it, the way you do when you love someone and you want to be part of their happiness, even if you know the relationship underneath is complicated. I came to venue tours. I gave opinions on centerpieces. I sat through a 2-hour conversation about chair sashes that I will never fully recover from. And then, about 4 months before the wedding, Renee asked me for a favor. She called me on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual because Renee usually texted. I remember I was in the middle of a code review and almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up on the last ring. "Hey," she said. "Do you have a second?" I closed my laptop. "Yeah, what's up?" "So Tyler and I have been going back and forth about this, and we've actually been a little bit over budget since we upgraded the venue." She paused. "The deposit for the catering is due at the end of the month, and it's a bigger chunk than we were expecting." I waited. "Mom and Dad have already put in so much," she said. "And I hate asking. You always seem to be doing okay, and it's only temporary, obviously. We'd pay you back." "How much?" I asked. She told me the number. It was $35,000. I didn't say anything for a moment. Not because I was shocked by the amount I'd seen larger invoices on a slow Tuesday, but because I was trying to understand what I was feeling. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something quieter and stranger than that. It was the feeling of being asked to fund a party you've been made to feel small at. But she was my sister, and despite everything, I wanted her wedding to be beautiful. "Send me the deposit information," I said. "Claire." Her voice cracked slightly. "Really?" "Yeah, really." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. "I'll pay you back, I promise. After the honeymoon, we'll figure out a plan." "Don't worry about it," I said. "Just send me the details." I transferred the money 4 days later. I did it through one of my company accounts, which was routine for me. I move money between accounts all the time for business reasons, and it was the account with the most liquidity at the time. I didn't think about it much. I didn't attach a note. I just sent it and went back to work. That was in January. By March, I noticed something shifting. Renee had stopped including me in the group chat, where she and her bridesmaids were coordinating logistics. I assumed it was an accidental omission. I sent her a message asking about the rehearsal dinner timing, and she replied 3 days later with a single line: "I'll let you know soon." My mother, when I called her, was vague, in a way she wasn't usually vague. "Oh, the wedding details are still coming together, you know how it is," she said, which was strange because my mother usually had opinions about everything, including things that had nothing to do with her. I told myself I was imagining it. Then, on a Thursday in late March, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up on the second ring. Claire Beaumont. "Hi, is this Claire?" The voice was professional, slightly uncertain. "This is Sophie calling from Blossomgate Events. I'm the coordinating planner for the Renee Beaumont Tyler Marsh wedding scheduled for May 17th. "Yes," I said. "Hi, Sophie." "Hi. I'm so sorry to be making this call, it's a bit of an unusual situation." A brief pause. "I was asked by the family to reach out to you regarding the catering deposit that was placed on the account." I set down my coffee. "I'm not entirely sure of the full context," Sophie continued, "and I want to handle this as sensitively as possible, but I was informed that the guest list has been revised and your name has been removed from it. And the family wanted me to let you know that the deposit will remain applied to the account." The room went very quiet. "I'm sorry," I said. "Can you say that again?" She repeated it. Gently, carefully, in the tone of someone who has been asked to deliver a message they clearly find distasteful. My invitation had been cancelled. The money I had transferred, $35,000, would be kept. I sat there for a moment without speaking. "Sophie," I said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What catering company is handling the reception?" She told me. It was Harvest & Co. Catering. "And the venue?" "The Lakeview Grand," she said. "Out in Burlington." "And the accommodation block for out-of-town guests, do you know where that was booked?" "The Harrington Suites on Lakeshore," she said, sounding slightly puzzled by the line of questioning. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "Sophie," I said, "I appreciate you calling me directly instead of leaving a voicemail. I want you to know that. And I want to ask you to stay on the line for just one more moment." "Of course." I opened my laptop. 3 tabs. 30 seconds. Harvest & Co. Catering ran their entire operation on a platform my company had built and maintained for the past 2 years. Their booking system, their vendor management portal, their invoice and deposit infrastructure, all of it ran through us. The Lakeview Grand had integrated our event coordination software 18 months ago, and we managed their client-facing booking platform under a service contract. The Harrington Suites was a newer client, but they'd migrated their reservations system to our platform 4 months earlier. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I said, "Sophie, I need you to issue a cancellation request for the entire event." A beat of silence. "I'm sorry?" "All of it. The catering contract, the venue booking, the accommodation block. Full cancellation." "Miss Beaumont, I don't think I have the authority to." "You don't," I said, "but I do. I need you to stay on the line while I make 2 calls." I put her on hold. The first call was to the account manager at Harvest & Co. His name was Derek, and we'd worked together for 2 years. I explained that I needed to flag a client account for cancellation review pending a contract dispute. He was confused but cooperative. The second call was to the operations contact at the Lakeview Grand. She was less confused because she'd seen me exercise this kind of administrative override once before for a legitimate technical reason. By the time I came back to Sophie, the wheels were already in motion. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "The vendors are being notified. The bookings will be flagged. None of this is permanent, yet everything can be restored within 48 hours with no penalty if the situation is resolved. But right now, as of this phone call, the event is on administrative hold." Sophie made a sound I can only describe as the noise a person makes when they realize a conversation has gone somewhere they absolutely did not expect. "Miss Beaumont, I'm going to need to notify the family." "Please do," I said. "And Sophie, thank you for calling me yourself. You didn't have to do that. I hung up and sat very still for about 4 minutes. Then my phone started ringing. The first call was from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. The second call was from my father, who almost never called me about anything. I let that go too. The third call was from a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be Tyler, my almost brother-in-law, calling from a phone that wasn't his, because I had presumably already been anticipated as someone who might not pick up for family numbers. I picked up Tyler's call. Claire. His voice was strained in the way that voices get when someone is trying very hard to sound calm. What's going on? We just got calls from the venue and the caterer saying there's some kind of hold on our account? That's correct, I said. What does that mean? The wedding is 7 weeks away. I know, Claire, he exhaled. Look, I don't know what Renee said to you, or what happened, but this is our wedding. Tyler, I said, not unkindly, I'm not angry at you. I genuinely like you, and I hope you and my sister have a long, happy marriage. But I gave $35,000 toward this wedding in good faith. I was then removed from the guest list, and I was informed of that removal by your wedding planner, not by my sister or my parents. So I need someone in your family to call me and explain what happened and have an actual conversation with me. That's all I'm asking for. He was quiet for a moment. Okay, he said. Okay, give me an hour. The conversation I'd been waiting for came 45 minutes later. It was Renee. She called and I picked up immediately, which I think surprised her. Claire, she said, and her voice was different from the voice she used when she was being vague. This was her real voice, the one underneath everything. I owe you an explanation. Yeah, I said. You do. She took a breath. Tyler's parents came to visit in February. She has opinions about everything. You know how some people are. She found out you'd dropped out of school and that you were doing freelance work or whatever, and she made a lot of comments. And Tyler's parents are paying for a big portion of the wedding, and she said she didn't want the photos and the head table to reflect. She used the phrase, inconsistent life choices. I sat with that for a moment. Inconsistent life choices. I know, it's horrible. I should have told you immediately and I didn't, and I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry. I let it go too long and then it felt like there was no good way to tell you, and then I thought maybe I could just handle it quietly. By having your wedding planner call me. She made a small sound. I was a coward. I know that. You let them keep my money, I said. That was Tyler's mom. She said the deposit was applied and it wasn't refundable and I should have fought harder. I didn't. I could hear her crying, quietly, in the way Renee cried, when she was genuinely ashamed and not performing sadness for effect. I knew the difference. Renee, I said, how much do Tyler's parents actually know about what I do for work? A pause. Not much. We told them you did some kind of tech stuff. And you? Do you know what my company does? A longer pause. I mean, I know you do software, consulting or something. The catering company you hired, I said. Harvest & Co. Their entire booking system runs on software my company built. I'm their infrastructure provider. Same with the Lakeview Grand. Same with the Harrington Suites. Silence. The deposit you kept? I continued. It went through an account that's registered to my company. I'm not just the person who sent you money, Renee. I'm operationally connected to almost every vendor at this wedding. More silence. And then, oh my God. Yeah, Claire. Her voice had gone very small. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said. I need to think. But I need you to understand something first. I'm not doing this because I want revenge on you. I'm doing this because I have spent years watching this family treat my work like it doesn't count, and I need you to actually see me. Not the dropout. Not the one who made inconsistent choices. Me. She was crying openly now. I see you. I do. I should have said it more. I should have stood up for you more. With Tyler's mom. With Mom and Dad when they'd say things. With you, I said. I needed you to see me with you. She didn't say anything for a moment. I know. We stayed on the phone for a while after that. Not talking, exactly. just staying on the line together the way we used to do when we were kids and one of us couldn't sleep. 2 days later, I got a call from my mother that was different from all the others. She didn't start with logistics or apologies. She just said, "I think we need to sit down, all of us. Can you come home for dinner this weekend?" I drove out to my parents' house in Oakville on a Sunday afternoon. It was one of those early April days that can't decide if it wants to be winter or spring. My father opened the door before I'd even knocked, which he almost never did, and the look on his face, not proud, exactly, but something adjacent to it, something like recognition, was not what I had been expecting. We sat at the kitchen table, and it was the most honest conversation I'd had with my family in years. My father said he hadn't realized the scale of what I'd built, and when he said it like a man who was genuinely reckoning with a gap in his understanding, not just trying to manage a situation. My mother cried. Renee sat across from me and held eye contact in a way that felt like a promise. Tyler's parents were not at that dinner. That was not an accident. The following week, Renee called and asked if I would come back to the wedding, not as an afterthought, as her sister. She said Tyler had had a long and apparently fairly uncomfortable conversation with his mother, and that certain arrangements had been reconsidered. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for 3 days. I talked to a friend who knows me better than almost anyone, and who told me, "You don't owe them a presence at that wedding, but you know who you'd be doing it for if you went. Make sure that person is someone you actually want to show up for." I called Renee back on a Thursday morning. "I'll be there," I said, "but I have one condition." She waited. Mom introduces me by my actual title when she talks to Tyler's parents. Not my daughter who does tech stuff. My name and my title. Renee laughed. It was a real laugh, surprised out of her. "Done," she said. Obviously done. The holds on the vendor accounts were lifted within the hour. The wedding was in May, on a Saturday, and it was genuinely beautiful. The Lakeview Grand looked exactly as good as it was supposed to look. The catering was excellent. The weather cooperated. My sister walked down the aisle, and I cried before she even reached the front, which I had not anticipated and have no apologies for. I sat at the family table. Tyler's mother looked at me once across the room, with an expression I couldn't fully read, somewhere between reassessment and the specific discomfort of a person who realizes they've significantly misjudged something. My mother leaned over at one point and introduced me to one of Tyler's aunts with, "This is Claire, my younger daughter. She runs a software company." Just like that. Simply. Without the qualifiers. It was such a small sentence. It hit me somewhere behind the sternum. At the reception, one of Tyler's cousins, who worked in tech himself and had apparently been curious about me since the vendor situation had made the rounds through the family grapevine, came over and asked me about my business. We talked for almost an hour. He asked for a card. I didn't have one on me because I hadn't thought to bring any to a wedding, which he found funny, and I gave him my LinkedIn instead. 3 weeks after the wedding, that conversation turned into a referral that became one of my largest contracts of the year. My relationship with my family is not fixed. I want to be honest about that. Because the version of this story where everything is resolved and everyone learns their lesson and gathers for warm holiday dinners doesn't quite capture what reconciliation actually looks like when it's real. It's slower than that. It's a series of small corrections. It's my father calling me for the first time to ask about my work without waiting for a crisis to prompt the conversation. It's Renee texting me a link to a tech article and saying, "Thought this might be relevant to what you're doing." It's small, and it's real, and I'd take that over a clean resolution any day. What I learned from all of this, and I did learn things, even when I was the one who had been wronged, is that the people who dismiss you have usually built an entire internal story about who you are. They're not always doing it maliciously. Sometimes they're just not looking closely enough. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not the dramatic gesture, not the leverage, not the moment where you reveal the cards in your hand. Sometimes the most powerful thing is simply refusing to disappear, continuing to build, continuing to show up as yourself so completely and so consistently that eventually the story they've been telling about you cannot survive contact with the actual evidence. The $35,000, by the way, was quietly returned to my account 2 weeks after the wedding. No note, no conversation, just a transfer. I noticed it on a Monday morning during a routine account review. I moved it to a savings account I opened for my niece or nephew because by then Renee had news she was just starting to share. Some things you hold on to, some things you put somewhere useful, and some lessons you just write into the foundation of everything you build next. If you take anything from what happened to me, let it be this: the people who underestimate you are not your measuring stick. Your consistency, your work, your willingness to keep building, even when no one in your immediate orbit is paying attention, that is what compounds. Quietly, invisibly, the way good infrastructure works. Nobody notices it until it isn't there. And by then, you've already been the one holding everything together for longer than any of them realized.